Hey everyone, welcome to Dragonfly Projects and Homestead. My name is Alex, and last week we had a pretty significant power outage. Lasted around 7 hours, and it was around minus 20 degrees Celsius at the time, which I think is close to 0 Fahrenheit if I'm not mistaken. And that made me realize I wanted to share with you guys what our strategy was for power outages here in the rural environment so that we can keep warm. A lot of my neighbors still use indoor wood stoves. So they use a wood heat source. So basically when the power goes out, they can still heat up their house or at least a room of the house with wood. When we moved in, the only heat source in the house was a wood stove on the first floor, which we got rid of quite quickly, and then we converted it to propane furnace. But that means no power, no heat, and it was quite cold that night when we lost power. Thankfully, we had reached the minus 40s a week prior, which is about minus 40 Fahrenheit. So thankfully, we weren't that cold, but the power, when it went out, it kind of flickered, and once we learned what caused the power outage, it made sense. Basically, a tree fell on one of the lines, and after about an hour, I gave it an hour to see if the power was going to come back. Once it didn't, I decided that I had to bring out the generator to start hooking things up. So right now, the way it works for me is I bring out the generator and I have to pass some extension cords through the basement window and run everything off of extension cords for now. I will eventually put a hardwired version. Basically, it means there is an outdoor plug that plugs into my 50 amp plug here, and the generator gives power to the box, and the box is connected inside of the house to what I'll refer as a manual generator switch panel, and that is hooked up to my regular electrical panel, and I'll show you afterwards how it works, but you get to decide which circuit you can run off of the generator once you have a power outage. This is a Champion brand generator, 12,000 watts starting power and 9,500 watts running power, which means I can have at all times 9,500 watts worth of electricity. And sometimes some appliances, when they kick on, there's a surge or a starting wattage that's much higher, so it can ramp up to 12,000 just for the starting procedure. Something that has a fan or a compressor, so something like a fridge, a refrigerator, a freezer, your furnace, maybe your AC. Usually when they ramp up, they need a lot more power to get started, and then once they're started, they can run on lower wattages. So you got to be careful. This is probably the biggest size or close to that you can get in what I'll consider a portable generator. This thing is quite heavy. I think it's around 300 pounds. It's not something you want to lug around all the time. That's why it's on wheels. And it's stored in the garage here, and the house is right behind me, and that's where the outlet box for the outdoor connection is going to be, so you don't have to run it very far or carry it very far. This one's fairly simple. I was looking at maybe a more known brand, although Champion has been around, but I've been super impressed by this thing. It runs really well. I bought it at Costco, which has a very, very convenient return policy if ever this breaks. And compared to the more expensive brands, roughly this could break 3 times and I could replace it 4 times before I even get to the price of the more expensive brand. So I would have to be very, very unlucky. And I'm thinking that probably once the house renos are done and I'm finally happy and finalize everything in the house, I might get one of those standby generator that basically sits on a concrete pad. It's always there, it's covered with the box, and when the power goes out, it automatically switches and it can supply the whole house with power, not just some circuits. In this case, the price was right, so this can be used to run the whole house. I also use it from time to time. I use the tractor to move it to areas where I need some power tools that I can plug in, because usually the plugged-in version is a bit more powerful than the battery version. Or if I know I'll be running there a long time and I need to recharge some batteries, I'll usually bring it out there for that purpose. So it's quite convenient for me to have it. It is multi-purpose use. I'll just show you quickly how it works. This version has multiple outlets. I have 4 GFCI outlets. Same idea as what's in your bathroom. So if it detects a ground fault, as in water touches the electrical component, the built-in breaker here will jump. There's also built-in breakers for every outlets. They are 20 amps. There's a 30 amp plug, which looks like some of the RV plugs out there, and then there's a 50 amp plug. that can use the full power of the generator. One thing to note is even though this is a 50 amp plug, the max amperage of the whole generator is 39.5 amps. So that's good to know. Although when I size the generator and the manual switching panel, they're both for 50 amps. And the max wattage that the panel can support is 12,500. So I'm within the range of the generator. So it's matched properly with the panel. For this particular unit, I can do two things. There is a battery here for the auto start, so I can turn it on with just the battery if I want. So now I realize that I left it on by mistake, so the battery's probably shot. On the side here, fuel tank is on the top here. Actually, let me bring it around. I'll show you what you can see here. So in this case here, it's a Champion brand, 12,000 watts, 9,500 running watts. You can see 3 different banks, different breakers for those, and then the GFCI plugs also have their own reset and test switch. And this is a waterproof cover in case it's outside the elements. You should not try to leave it in the elements, but if it gets a bit wet, it's not too bad. This is the main switch, the on-off for the main breaker. Usually it says to leave it off when you start it, and then once it's running and it's stabilized and the engine's a bit warmer, you can flick it off. Flick it on. On the side here, stop, running, and then if you press again up, it will crank over with the battery. So there is a starter on there, but now I can see my battery is dead, so I would have to pull it manually, but this is a fairly easy unit to start manually. If you come on the side here, you can see the fuel tank is here. It's full right now with the fuel gauge that shows full. You can see the fuel tank is on here, goes down here to my switch. There's a little filter for the fuel. Turn the fuel on. Choke is here, so full choke to start it, and then the recoil for the manual start is here. It is a big engine. It's a 0.5 liter CC engine, but usually a couple pulls. It might take a bit more now because I ran it dry last time to store it properly, but we'll see how it wants to go. And if the battery is charged, as long as the fuel is on and then the choke is in the proper setting, if I flick it on, again, it didn't run long enough for the battery to charge, so I'm going to have to recharge that, but you can start it automatically. A good thing to note is if you're trying to run a fridge or freezer off of one of the GFCI outlets, there is, for some reason, it is well documented, fridges and freezers will trip the breaker on the GFCI outlet for some reason. I don't know why, but when it was plugged into there, it kept tripping, so it kept turning off. And when I did some research online, it's a well-known issue. So in this case, what I had to do is I had to go purchase basically an extension cord. So this plugs into the 30 amp switch and gives me 4 regular outlets. And then I have to make sure that the fridge is plugged into one of these because this is not a GFCI outlet. So basically what happened last time, ran out of power, brought it outside, started running my extension cords. The only downside is I had to add a little connector, a male connector at the end of the cable that supplies power to my furnace, so I could plug into an extension cord, so I could plug it into either the generator. The other thing is I am on a deep well here, so I need the submersible pump to run for me to have water, so I need the generator to have any kind of water pressure inside of the house. And now I also have a filtration system, so all of that ran off of the generator. The good news is this generator is able to supply 220 to 40 volts. Right now, the current pump in there is a temporary pump. It only runs on 120, but eventually the pump in there will run on 240. So this unit will be able to supply that. But but it'll only be able to supply it properly once it's properly hooked up to the actual generator switching panel. So this is our main method of staying connected. What ended up running was furnace for the heat, the water pump for obviously water, ran the water filtration. I connected my extraction pit. Basically, it's a thing that is in the ground in the basement so that it can shred and evacuate waste inside of your septic septic tank. I usually more commonly refer to it as the crap pit because I didn't want that to overflow. Also supplied power to the fridge upstairs, to the Starlink internet. I mean, we had internet for the whole house, which is quite nice. And I had an extension cord running to the TV upstairs so that we could watch some stuff off of our internet. So we just watched a couple of TV shows on streaming services. And I had an extra extension cord going around the kitchen if we had to heat up some water or wanted to use it for anything else, then that was available. Now let me show you the smaller, more convenient, more portable backup power option we also have. This is the Bluetti EB3A 600 watts inverter. So this is the other option that we use when we need to have power on the go or short term. Basically, we got this unit when we got Camille because when we went on road trips, we had to have a way to warm up her milk. And we have one of those bottle warmers. So we looked underneath the bottle warmer. The bottle warmer says it needs 400 watts to run. And the inverter on this unit is able to provide 600 watts. So this was the smallest and most affordable unit that was out there that could run the bottle warmer for us. Fantastic unit. I've had zero problems with it. I got it during the Amazon Prime Day sale. I think I paid $290 Canadian for it. It's not very heavy. It has a convenient handle on top. It's not too big. It has many different inlets and outlets. The bottle warmer worked a treat. You can plug some solar into it if you want, or just your regular wall plug to recharge it. You can also use it as a uninterruptible power supply. So let's say you have something critical that can't shut off, you can plug it into the wall and have the item you want to keep running, something like your modem or a computer, plugged into the output. And if ever power runs out, then the battery inside of this can take care of that. You can also see it shows how many watts input, how many watts output, the battery percentage, and how long of a runtime you have. So when the power went out, right away what I did is I plugged the baby monitor into the output here with the baby camera so we could keep an eye on Camille as she was sleeping. And then I waited it out just to see if we could hopefully not have to do the whole setup downstairs with the generator. But after an hour, the temperature in the house dropped by a degree. So I knew I had to do something because it was quite cold outside. But I've also tried, this will run a PlayStation and a 55-inch LCD TV for about 2 hours easily. There's also a wireless charging pad on the top where you can put your phone or any accessories that can charge wirelessly. There's also a little light here if you want. All in all, extremely convenient. I don't have a solar panel for it yet. I do want to buy it eventually. Whenever I'm out in the woods filming all day and I know I'll need to recharge batteries, I always bring this with me to recharge the batteries. I leave it in the tractor and it works wonderfully well. So here is the manual switch for the generator. Basically, you do your connections inside of your panel and the power from the generator comes to the switch. The switch either draws power from the panel if there is power. If there is not, what you do is you have here, it says generator off or line. So for every single one of these breakers, you can decide if line means power from the panel, off means off, and gen means drawing power from the generator. And you can see there's different types of breakers, different size. The double pole 20 amp will be for the submersible pump for the well. A couple 20 amps breakers. I do want to have one in the kitchen so that if anything happens, we can at least, you know, toast some toast, warm up some stuff, make some coffee, or run the microwave. We'll have filtration for the water system, furnace, the crap pit, probably one circuit in the basement that will also include one of the fridges. And I'll probably leave my internet on that circuit. One circuit for the some lights upstairs so that at least we have some stuff. And I'm not sure about the last circuit yet, but at least enough that we can get by, that the whole house can be run and will be nice and comfortable. We don't currently have AC for the whole house. They're just little window units. So I can maybe just run extension cords for whatever I have to do in that case. But I'll be excited once this is installed because it'll be a permanent install. It'll be as simple as pulling out the generator, plugging a cable inside of the wall, and I'm all done and all set up. I don't have to run any extension cords through windows, and I don't have to find a way to seal that window so that the cold air doesn't come in. Or when we had that power outage that lasted a week last May, to fight off the mosquitoes and the bugs trying to enter the house and make life overall unenjoyable at that moment. Let me quickly take you around the house and I'll show you where the outdoor plug is for the generator. Here's the box made by the same company as the switch, Reliance Controls. Basically, this is the 50 amp version. So there is the plug here, and this connects to a cable that just goes through the wall. Right now it's right next to the electrical panel, but after some thinking and deciding, we're going to move it to the other side where it's a lot easier to plug it in, and then we'll just run a cable through the house to the panel. Also, a couple of simple tips and tricks that I've learned after having this for over a year now. When you run the generator, not a bad idea to just shut off the fuel, let it run dry. It'll eventually die from fuel starvation. That means you make sure that the line that goes to the carburetor is not full of fuel, because if it sits for too long, it tends to either gum up or gel up and could make your life a big pain in the butt to try and restart it if you don't run it often. I try to use ethanol-free fuel if I can. It's not always available. It's a bit more expensive, but there's less chance of it gumming up or going bad. It does preserve longer also. I also try to run it once every month at a minimum, just to make sure everything's nice and free-flowing. Check your oil, change your oil, make sure you follow the manufacturer's directions, and you'll have a trouble-free life with your generator, because usually when you need it, you really need it. Thank you everyone for stopping by. I think spring is right around the corner. Could be just Mother Nature tricking us, but if that's the case, then very excited. That means maple syrup season is just around the corner. I did order the barrel stove kit so I can turn a regular 55-gallon steel barrel into a makeshift evaporator for this year, so I can use wood as my heat source and not propane for a much cheaper experience. And also, burning wood just smells better and feels better, and it's more, I prefer it to just burning propane. If that's the case, then I'll bring you guys along through my whole process this year from tapping the trees. I will probably do 50 trees, give or take. I also bought some equipment to try and make my life easier this year and be more efficient with the whole setup. I will make sure to post an update or another video once the setup is finalized and completed, so that you guys can have an idea of what my permanent setup looks like. Obviously, everybody's different. Electrical code is different in every area. For example, in the States, you guys are allowed to do the connection for these cables inside of your electrical box, the main fuse panel. In Canada, we're not allowed to do that, so I have to do that at inside of an external panel. It does add a bit of more complication to it, but you got to follow the regulations and make sure everything's safe. Otherwise, if you have any questions, comments, suggestions, things I might have missed, things you've liked or enjoyed, make sure to leave the comments below. Like and subscribe. More content on the way. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.